And that's what our election is about. Our election is about understanding the importance of this beautiful country of ours in terms of what we stand for around the globe as a democracy. As a democracy, we know there's a duality to the nature of democracy.
You know, some economic policies last week.
Yeah.
Can you explain how you're going to pay for those? And can you give us a sense of what other policies you want to unveil going forward?
Sure. Well, I mean, you just look at it in terms of what we are talking about, for example, around children and the child tax credit and extending the EITC. It's at $6,000 for the first year of a child's life. The return on that investment in terms of what that will do and what it will pay for will be tremendous. We've seen it when we did it the first year of our administration. We reduced child poverty by over 50%. So that's a lot of the work. And then what we're doing in terms of the tax credits, we know that there's a great return on that investment. When we increase home ownership in America, what that means in terms of increasing the tax base, not to mention property tax base, what that does to fund schools, again, return on investment. I think it's a mistake for any person who talks about public policy to not critically evaluate how you measure the return on investment.
Okay, so Kamala Harris, her people, they just came out with a tax plan. They went weeks without giving any type of plan at all. You go to the website, all you will see is donate, send some of your money. There was no plan, no goals, nothing, because they were trying to sell her on identity politics and on Orange Man Bad. But they were pressured into coming up with some type of plan, and they released this tax plan. And all I gotta say is, she's a fucking communist, man. This woman is a full-blown socialist communist, and I heard her father was a Marxist, so I guess she's a chip off the old block. But we're going to get into this. We're going to discuss some of these ridiculous depression-causing tax policies that she's pushing. So first, let's look at this short news clip to give a summary of some of her proposals.
Harris says if she's elected, she will cut taxes for most Americans, ban grocery price gouging through price controls, and build more affordable housing. Here are some of the details. Harris proposed a new child tax credit up to $6,000 for families with infants, tax cuts for families with children, and lower prescription drug costs. Additionally, she suggested a $25,000 support plan for some first-time home buyers and tax incentives for affordable home builders. Of course, all of this would require Democratic majority in the House and the Senate to go along with her plan for this to actually happen. Meanwhile, Trump is promising to defeat inflation, end job-killing regulations, and bring in economic abundance to pay off America's $35 trillion debt. That plan would also need congressional approval.
They didn't go into detail, and they weren't critical, asking a lot of questions about it either. But that $25,000 for home buyers, first-time home buyers, or whoever qualifies for that, that's crazy. Because all it's going to do is inflate the housing market. We can look at colleges. That's a clear example. The reason why college is so expensive is because of government money, because of these Pell Grants and these loans that the government is guaranteeing. That allows the colleges to continuously raise the price of college way faster than inflation is rising. So you do something like that to the housing market, we're talking about a depression. It is going to be a killer. This is the #1 asset in the United States. This is the housing market, and she's trying to destroy it. And I don't think these people are completely nefarious with their intentions here, even though these Democrats are evil. But I believe that they just have this ideology, this Marxist type ideology of taking wealth from some people, giving it to other, distribution, this communist style way of thinking. And they believe that they're righteous, that is correct, and capitalism is evil. So that's a hill they're willing to die on. Now let's look at the CNBC clip where they break down in more depth on what the hell this woman is proposing.
Meantime, the vice president's tax proposals might have a dramatic impact on investors. Robert Frank has some numbers for us this morning. Hey, Robert.
Good morning, Carl. Well, Vice President Harris proposing to double the tax on capital gains and taxing unrealized gains for the very wealthy. Her campaign endorsing a plan that calls for increasing the top tax rate on long-term cap gains from 20 to 44.6%. That would be the highest rate ever in U.S. history. So if you're in New York, you sold some stock, you're above that income level, the combined city, state, and federal rate would be 55.5%. If you're in California, would be just under 58%. She's also calling for a tax on unrealized gains for those with a net worth of more than $100 million. So that would call for a minimum tax of 25% on unrealized gains. So even if you didn't sell something and it gained in value during that year. So they would be taxed on any annual increase in the asset or value, again, even if you didn't sell. Non-tradable assets, like a private company, very illiquid, they would be taxed at the last valuation event plus some annual increase. Illiquid taxpayers, those would be a separate group defined as those with less than 20% of their wealth in tradable assets. They could defer payments until their death, but with any interest charged attached to that. Now, some estimates show the tax would raise about $500 billion in revenue over 10 years. But guys, when you look at the tradable versus illiquid rules on this, there would be a lot of unintended consequences. Like, for instance, David, this would be interesting on the deal side. You'd get a ton of take privates because if you're a private company or a liquid asset, you would defer those taxes over the life of the asset. Whereas if you have tradable stock, that could be marked to market every year and you'd pay that tax. So there are lots of questions, lots of complicated details that would...
All I can say from this point is she's a thief. This woman is the queen of thieves, man. The original Americans went to war for much less than this. You're trying to steal people's money, snatch everything that they have. Some states, people are going to be spending nearly 60% of their gains in taxes. Unbelievable, man. Unbelievable. And you're trying to take unrealized gains. Talking about some people can defer until they're dead, but that right there, just the unrealized gain, that is ludicrous, man. That's another thing that will cause a depression, will completely destroy the economy. Inflating the housing market and then stealing money, forcing people to pay on unrealized gain. Oh, it's ridiculous. First of all, taxation, period, is theft. The government is printing money, sending money all over the world, Ukraine, Israel, the military-industrial complex, big pharma. Of course, the politicians are getting rich. Bring in about $4 trillion, spend about $7 trillion. Got to print money, snatching $4 trillion from the taxpayers just to waste it. Thieves, man. A den of thieves, and Kamala is proving herself to be the queen of thieves. Now let's look at Vivek giving his opinion on this ludicrous idea of taxing unrealized gains.
Especially in the tech sector, you have people sitting on large, long-standing embedded capital gains. And so for people to understand what this means, it means you have to pay taxes on sales that you have not yet made. And even forget the stock market and think about even everyday Americans across this country. That means that if you're a farmer or if you're a small business owner, you will owe taxes with cash you literally do not have in your pocket to pay those taxes. That is a formula for a second Great Depression, and it is something that's been in the bloodstream of Democratic policy for a long time. Go back to Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders' plans of a wealth tax, even in the 2020 primary. I think this idea is here to stay for the Democrats. That's a big one. I think Tim Walz's selection as vice president says a lot. That's the first real presidential-style decision we've seen Kamala Harris have to make. She went with somebody who at the state level has favored increasing taxes on capital gains. In that case, it was unrealized, but they have talked about unrealized gains and taxing them. And I do worry about that, what that means, not just for the stock market, but for everyday Americans across the country.
The stock market, if there's not 60 votes for that in the Senate, the stock market doesn't have to price it.
Yes, 60 votes, or if you agree. I respectfully disagree with one aspect of that, because Kamala Harris has been the chief proponent of ending the filibuster to ram through her policy objectives. Yeah. And so if she's the president of the United States, and in my view, God forbid, a Democratic Senate to aid her, that could be 51 votes. And could you get to 51 votes on a major change in tax policy like that? I think the answer is absolutely yes. I think that's conceivable. And so for a lot of business leaders across the country, one of the questions they might want to ask is, which is going to be the administration that's more friendly to business? Well, we don't know where she stands on tariffs. We don't know where she stands on a lot of other questions. But on tax policy alone, the idea of not just raising tax rates, but raising tax rates and applying taxes on unrealized income, that is a catastrophe of epic proportion.
Now let's look at Van Jones. Van Jones is an example of the people on the far left, because we're calling this out how ridiculous it is, but she's in an echo chamber. She's in a bubble. She's not listening to us. There are so many people, millions of people who support this, who believe that these are good ideas, who believe that the rich people are taking advantage of Americans, who believe that they can distribute wealth, they can tax the hell out of the rich, distribute it among the poor and the middle class. and everything is going to work out perfectly. I think this is a terrible idea, but Van Jones is going to support what she's doing with these taxes and that idea of price gouges. Let's take a look.
It's interesting, Van Jones. A recent New York Times Siena poll showed 53% of Americans say Trump would do a better job with the economy compared to just 44% for Harris. Do you think Harris's newly unveiled policies will help her with voters?
I think so. And honestly, I think, thank goodness we're finally hearing from a Democrat aggressively on the price gouging. It's made no sense to me. The past 4 years, Democrats have no problem dragging in technology CEOs, grilling them, going after them. You guys got to do better. But most Americans don't have a problem with technology CEOs. It's these grocery stores ripping people off. The big grocers, there's no reason in the world for food prices to be this high. All the supply chain stuff has worked itself out long ago. They are just ripping people off every day. And the Biden administration did put together a task force of the Federal Trade Commission and Department of Justice to look into it. But to your point earlier, Biden never felt comfortable talking about the fact that he was going after this price gouging. Kamala feels comfortable. And you talk about her strength. You talk about this kind of politics of joy. She's also tough. And she knows that Americans are getting ripped off. She wants to do something about it. And I say, thank goodness we finally got somebody willing to do this and talk about it as boldly as she is.
This is a socialist communist mindset of stealing wealth and giving it away to people who didn't work for it, people didn't earn it, and taking it away from people who are going to be building businesses, hiring people, holding up the economy, building houses, giving it away to people who are just going to burn it. Ludicrous idea. And you're going to disincentivize people from investing in the United States to begin with, or holding their assets in the United States by doing this. But I don't think that this is going to pass because she's not going to win. But all of this rosy coverage of her is over now because the news, the left-wing propagandists were trying to say, no, she wasn't the most left-wing senator in the United States, even though that's what she was declared as. But they're trying to say, oh, she was a centrist. She's right there in the middle with the independents. She's not far left. She's not like Pocahontas. She's not like Crazy Bernie. Complete lie. And we can see with her policies now, she's a full-blown communist. Wants to fix prices, wants to tax unrealized gains, wants to inflate the hell out of the housing market. And she can't see how destructive these ideas are. So let me know what you guys think about this. Leave me your thoughts below, share the video. Thanks for watching.